Friends, do you know that a single promise made in a letter over 100 years ago still shapes the lives of millions today? The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the world's most painful and persistent struggles. But how did it really begin? Today, we're going back to the very roots, beyond the headlines, beyond the politics, to uncover the true story of how this conflict started and why it still matters to all of us. Let's travel back in time. The year is 1917. The world is at war. World War I is tearing Europe and the Middle East apart. The Ottoman Empire, which has ruled over the land called Palestine for nearly 400 years, is collapsing. The region is a crossroads of faith and history, home to about 700,000 people, mostly Arab Muslims and Christians, with a small but growing Jewish minority. For centuries, this land has been a mosaic of cultures and religions. Jerusalem, at its heart, is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. People live in ancient stone cities, farm the hills, and pray in mosques, churches, and synagogues. Life is not always peaceful, but it is deeply rooted. But in the late 1800s, winds of change begin to blow. Across Europe, Jewish communities face rising waves of anti-Semitism, pogroms, discrimination, and violence. In response, a movement called Zionism is born. Its goal, to create a safe homeland for Jews in their ancient land, Palestine. At the same time, Arab nationalism is awakening. After centuries under Ottoman rule, Arab leaders dream of independence and self-determination. The people of Palestine see themselves as part of this new Arab world, hoping for freedom and dignity. But as World War I rages, the great powers, Britain and France, are making secret deals. They promise the same land to different people, hoping to win allies and secure their own interests. The seeds of future conflict are quietly being sown. Here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. In November 1917, the British government issues the Balfour Declaration, a letter just 67 words long, but with consequences that will echo for generations. It promises to support the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, while also saying that nothing should prejudice the rights of the existing non-Jewish communities. But how can one land be promised to two peoples? The British, desperate for support in the war, have also made promises to Arab leaders, promising independence if they help fight the Ottomans. And in secret, Britain and France have already agreed to divide the Middle East between themselves after the war. As the Ottoman Empire falls, Britain takes control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate. Jewish immigration increases, fueled by hope and desperation. Arab communities, who have lived here for generations, begin to fear for their future. Protests and violence break out. Tensions rise year after year. By the 1930s, the world is watching. The Holocaust in Europe drives even more Jewish refugees to Palestine. The British, caught in the middle, try to limit immigration, but the pressure only grows. The land is boiling with anger, fear, and hope. Let's walk through the key moments, step by step. 1917, the Balfour Declaration is issued. Jewish immigration begins to rise, but the Arab population is deeply concerned. The British military occupies Jerusalem, ending centuries of Ottoman rule. 1920, Britain is officially granted the mandate to govern Palestine by the League of Nations. The population is about 90% Arab and 10% Jewish. Tensions between Jewish and Arab communities start to flare. The first major riots break out in Jerusalem. 1921, more violence erupts in Jaffa. Dozens are killed. The British struggle to keep the peace, but their policies often seem to favor one side or the other, deepening mistrust. 1922, the British government issues the Churchill White Paper, trying to clarify its position. It says that Jewish immigration should not exceed the economic capacity of the country, but offers little comfort to the Arab majority. 1929, violence explodes in Jerusalem and Hebron. Rumors and fear spark riots. In Hebron, 67 Jews are killed, and the ancient Jewish community is driven out. In Jerusalem, both Jews and Arabs are killed. The British respond with force, but the wounds run deep. 1936 to 1939, the Arab Revolt. For 3 years, Palestinian Arabs rise up against British rule and Jewish immigration. The British respond with harsh measures, mass arrests, executions, and the destruction of villages. Thousands are killed or imprisoned. The Jewish community forms its own militias for self-defense. 1939, as World War II looms, the British issue another white paper, severely limiting Jewish immigration. But the horrors of the Holocaust are about to change everything. 1945, World War II ends. 6 million Jews have been murdered in the Holocaust. Survivors desperately seek refuge. Many try to reach Palestine, but the British block their ships. Tensions reach a breaking point. 1947, the United Nations proposes a plan to divide Palestine into 2 states, one Jewish, one Arab. Jerusalem would be international. The Jewish leadership accepts, but the Arab leadership rejects the plan, seeing it as unfair and a violation of their rights. May 14, 1948, the British leave. The State of Israel is declared. Within hours, neighboring Arab countries Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq invade. The First Arab-Israeli War begins. 1949, the war ends. Israel controls more land than the UN plan had given. Over 700,000 Palestinian Arabs become refugees, forced to flee their homes. The world is shocked. The armistice lines, known as the Green Line, leave the West Bank under Jordanian control and Gaza under Egyptian control. Jerusalem is divided. 1956, the Suez Crisis. Israel, Britain, and France attack Egypt after it nationalizes the Suez Canal. The fighting is brief, but the region remains unstable. 1967, the Six-Day War. Israel launches a preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In just 6 days, Israel captures the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. The occupation begins a new chapter of conflict. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack on Israel. The fighting is fierce, but ends in a stalemate. The world fears a wider war. 1978 to 1979, the Camp David Accords. Egypt becomes the first Arab country to make peace with Israel, but the Palestinian question remains unresolved. 1987, the First Intifada. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza rise up against Israeli occupation. The world watches as images of stone-throwing youths and armed soldiers fill the news. 1993, the Oslo Accords. For the first time, Israeli and Palestinian leaders shake hands and agree to a framework for peace. Hopes soar, but violence and mistrust continue. 2000, the Second Intifada. A new wave of violence erupts. Suicide bombings, military operations, and suffering on both sides. 2005, Israel withdraws from Gaza, but the blockade and conflict continue. 2006 to present, Gaza is controlled by Hamas, a militant group. Multiple wars break out between Israel and Gaza. The West Bank remains under Israeli occupation, with expanding settlements and frequent clashes. But behind these dates and battles are real people, families, children, dreams, and heartbreak. Imagine being a Palestinian family in 1948. You wake up to the sound of gunfire. Rumors spread that the fighting is coming closer. You grab what you can, some clothes, a family photo, the key to your house, and flee, hoping to return in a few days. But days turn into weeks, then years, then decades. Your home is gone. Your village is erased from the map. You live in a refugee camp, telling your children about the life you lost. Or imagine being a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust. You arrive in Palestine, exhausted and traumatized. You've lost your family, your home, your entire world. You hope to find safety, to build a new life. But instead, you find yourself in the middle of another war. You fight for survival, for a place to call home. There are stories of heroism, like the doctors and nurses who treated the wounded on both sides, risking their lives to save others. There are stories of loss, like the families separated by borders and barbed wire, unable to visit the graves of their loved ones. And there are stories of hope, like the rare moments when neighbors helped each other, even in the darkest times. In the refugee camps of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, generations of Palestinians grow up with memories of a lost homeland. In Israel, families remember the fear of being surrounded by enemies, the trauma of war, and the longing for peace. Children on both sides learn to live with fear. Sirens, bomb shelters, checkpoints, and walls become part of daily life. Yet, even in the midst of conflict, there are moments of kindness, shared laughter, secret friendships, and dreams of a better future. This conflict isn't just about politics or land. It's about identity, memory, and the longing for home. The aftermath of these early years shaped everything that followed. For Palestinians, the loss of their homes and the creation of refugee camps became a defining trauma, what they call the Nakba, or catastrophe. Generations have grown up in exile, holding keys to houses they may never see again. The right of return becomes a central demand, a symbol of justice and hope for Israelis. The creation of their state was a miracle, a safe haven after centuries of persecution. But it came at a cost, and the fear of being surrounded by enemies has never gone away. The memory of the Holocaust, the wars, and the constant threat of violence shape Israeli society and politics. The world tried to help. The United Nations set up refugee agencies. Peace talks were held, again and again. But the wounds were deep, and trust was hard to rebuild. Over the decades, more wars broke out: 1956, 1967, 1973. The occupation of the West Bank and Gaza brought new challenges. Settlements grew. Walls went up. Hope for peace flickered, then faded. In 1987, the First Intifada erupted, a mass uprising by Palestinians in the occupied territories. Images of children throwing stones at tanks shocked the world. Israel responded with force. The violence left deep scars on both sides. In 1993, the Oslo Accords offered a glimmer of hope. Israeli and Palestinian leaders shook hands on the White House lawn, agreeing to a framework for peace. But the process stalled. Violence continued. Extremists on both sides tried to sabotage the talks. In 2000, the Second Intifada broke out. Suicide bombings, military operations, and suffering on both sides. The dream of peace seemed further away than ever. In 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza, but the blockade and conflict continued. Hamas, a militant group, took control of Gaza. Multiple wars broke out between Israel and Gaza. The West Bank remained under Israeli occupation, with expanding settlements and frequent clashes. Today, the conflict continues. Millions of Palestinians live under occupation or in exile. Israelis live with the constant threat of rockets and attacks. The world watches, often feeling helpless. So, friends, what can we learn from this story? The Israel-Palestine conflict didn't start overnight. It's the result of promises made and broken, of dreams and fears colliding on the same land. It's a story of two peoples, each with deep roots and real pain. But history also shows us that change is possible. There have been moments of dialogue, of shared humanity, even in the darkest times. The lesson? Lasting peace can only come when both sides are heard, when justice and security are shared, and when the world remembers the human cost behind the headlines. The story isn't over. But by understanding how it began, maybe we can help write a better ending. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you found this story moving or learned something new, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep seeking the truth.